Hello, I'm Grin, and welcome back to Wash Dry's Adventures in Rusty Bucket Bay Part 6. Who here remembers back in episode 1 or 2 when I said that hopefully each episode of the show would line up with one level of the game? Well, obviously that went well, didn't it? And the answer to that question, though rhetorical, would be no, it certainly hasn't, because we are, as you can clearly see, still in Rusty Bucket Bay. Though we have, as of late, had our luck turn for the better, because in the previous 2 episodes, things have gone considerably smoother. And we are now basically at a point where all of the difficult jiggies have been gotten, and all of the hard to get music notes also, so it should be easy streak from here. But things were done rather out of order and inconsistently, so let's speed things up for a little bit, because there's going to be a lot of running around foolishly for a bit. In fact, so foolish and constant was my running around that we don't need to slow down again until right about now. Which brings us to the rather brightly decorated cabin of the Rusty Bucket of Rusty Bucket Bay, and I've got to say I've always been jealous of how this room looks, as I really dig the aesthetics. But even more appreciated than the fantastic sense of decoration in this room is the 5th jiggy we've gotten in Rusty Bucket Bay, which is a mercifully easy one. Aside from that and a few music notes, however, there's not really much else going on in this room. A couple of gold feathers, a couple of sailors, who I do feel sort of bad about killing. I mean, they are clearly off duty, and it's sort of rude to go and kill a henchman while he's on break, but I guess, on the other hand, just don't be evil. And with those words of wisdom bestowed, let's speed up again until we get to another point of importance. And if you enjoy food as much as I do, there are a few places more important than the kitchen. And I've got to say, as far as kitchens go, this one's not run that well. There's only one sailor in here, well, 0 once I'm finished killing him, and yet it seems that every single appliance in the kitchen is turned on, though most of them aren't being used, and the refrigerator's left open. Making things even worse, not only is the refrigerator open, but the only thing in it is eggs, and they're not even in a box or anything, they're just standing around by themselves, and there's a horrific monster that has burrowed his way into the side of it. I mean, really, this kitchen is a total nightmare. There are, in total, for the entire kitchen, only 2 pots of food being cooked, and yet there are 16 hot plates turned on. You don't need to turn on 16 hot plates if you're only heating up 2 pots. It's ridiculous, it's a waste of energy, and it's really not very safe at all. And also, come to think of it, was that one sailor in the kitchen cooking for himself, or was he cooking for the entire vessel? Because if he was cooking 2 pots of food for himself, it's kind of excessive, but if that guy was the chef for the entire ship, well, 2 pots of soup are simply not going to cut it. And don't even get me started on the ovens, of which there are 6 of them, 3 of them are turned on and open, which, by the way, lets the heat out, and the only thing in any of them is a human skull. But even worse than there being a human skull getting cooked in this kitchen, did anyone notice that some of the soup was spilled on the ground here, and no one's thought to mop it up? That's a total slipping hazard, which means this kitchen is an occupational health and safety nightmare. And so it shouldn't be hugely surprising that I was rather glad to leave it behind, as I consider that kitchen to be one of the worst I've seen in any video game, second only probably to almost every single one found in the game Overcooked. What's not found in the game Overcooked, however, is this room here, which is colloquially referred to as a map room, due to it being full of and primarily used for, well, maps. Aside from just maps, however, there's also another 2 sailors who are very swiftly put to death. It's not a good business to be in, some music notes, and also this here detailed map of Australia. Yep, that's what it looks like. I did well in geography. And aside from that, there was also this map of a faster moving Australia. See, that's why it looks somewhat distorted, it's the Doppler effect at work. But that's pretty much everything of note that was found in this room, so let's speed things up once more. And not to toot my horn too much, but where we decide to slow down is where I toot my horn. 3 of them actually. This challenge going on here, as far as puzzles go, is an extremely simple one. All you have to do is learn the combination throughout the level, and then enter in the combination, then the cage lifts, and you get the jiggy. So why am I doing so badly at it, and why am I losing so much health, you ask? Well, rather simply, because I don't know the code. And you might well ask, but Grim, why not simply go down to the other side of the boat and look at the code on the wall, come back and enter it in? Well, rather simply, I remind you, this is Rusty Bucket Bay Part 6. I've been going at it for a pretty long time and failing constantly, and at this point, my mind had become a total puddle. Despite having passed this game multiple times for multiple years, I really couldn't remember where you got the code, and I for some reason had convinced myself it was from some character dialogue that I had skipped over or long since forgotten. And so, having taken a significant amount of damage, I set out to find more health to allow myself to continue the brute force assault on the code. Now, I'm going to speed this up, but notice how I go basically everywhere in the entire boat except for where the code is, and when I actually do go to where the code is, it's mostly entirely obscured and I don't even notice it. Spectacular, Grim. Good job. Great observation skills. And now that I've thoroughly reprimanded myself, let's speed up again to continue the hunt for health until we get back to the horns once more. Now, I know what you're probably thinking as you're watching me do and fail what I'd already done and failed earlier. You're probably saying to yourself, Grim, what were you thinking? Those are clearly whistles, they're not horns at all. And I do agree with you in a sense, but on the other hand, the term toot your own whistle isn't a real saying, or if it is, I've never heard it. And so, though I'm a washer-dryer, which means I don't have any hands, my proverbial hands by this proverb were literally tied. I mean, figuratively. And while I am taking a huge amount of damage for my efforts, I strongly feel that in no way having a limited amount of health later on in this level will affect me negatively. After all, I've already done the difficult challenges, so I should be able to get by even with reduced health. And despite my tremendous amount of failure, I did eventually rise above it and succeed and receive my Jiggy, which I feel somewhat cheated on. After all, I did do it the hard way, so I should have gotten 2 Jiggies for my effort, not the 1, but I guess that's why they say you should work smart, not hard, and what I did was very, very dumb. Also, I wasn't at all expecting the whistles, horns, to spit out a Jiggy, as instead I had fully expected that entering in the correct code would lift up the cage, revealing that Jiggy down there. I don't know why I had expected this, I've played this game enough times to know otherwise, and in the previous episode I already used the exact same mechanic to lift the cage to drop the TNT on the other side of the boat. But I suppose that's the damage that the engine room can do to you. Just say no to the engine room, kids. The engine room, not even once. And let's speed things up again, because I realize that if I fell from this height, it would probably end in disaster with the amount of health I have, so it's time for yet another honeycomb hunt. And on a somewhat vaguely related note, Hunt Honeycomb would be a great name for a B character who was also a detective. And on that note, not really, it's time to hit up on the crane to begin our high wire act, a sprint across the top of a crane within a short time span. Don't worry everyone, I learned my acrobatic skills from the Flying Graysons, who never encountered any form of tragedy ever. Now I must point out that while I make running across that crane look really quite easy, it's actually rather impressive that I'm so good at it. After all, if you watch the Olympics you'll notice that it seems that only women compete on the balancing beam, and never in Olympic history has a washer-dryer taken part in the event. So I do strongly feel that I definitely deserve that gold. And let's fast forward once more, because with that Jiggy achieved, we've been brought up to 7 gotten on this map, and it's time to move swiftly past me, running around pointlessly for a while, until we get to the next point of interest. And I ask, nay challenge any of you to name one thing more interesting than a mouldy old flooded dock warehouse. And if you even attempted to give an answer, I must immediately refute it, as after all, this here mouldy old flooded dock warehouse has already given us a Jiggy, bringing us up to 8 for Rusty Bucket Bay. Yes, indeed, it seems this mouldy old flooded dock warehouse is the place to be. It's full of some not too difficult platforming, music notes, a Jiggy, and even an extra life trophy, so it's definitely my preferred place over top of that terrible engine room. Well, that was a little bit too close for comfort. Oh, I really hate this level.